Hello and welcome to the RobinPod Weekly, which is powered by 𝗪𝗏𝗀𝗍 Auto Centre, the only car specialist trusted by the players, club officials and supporters of Hull Kingston Rovers. For this week's edition, I'm joined by two RobinPod regulars. There's James Purling and Scott Solway join me to discuss the Robins' victory over the Huddersfield Giants, Ryan Hall being a record breaker, and Rovers' game against Castleford on Thursday night. All this and more on the RobinPod Weekly. Good evening, gentlemen. Scott, I'll start with you, mate. How are you doing this week?
Yeah, all good, Johno. Not so bad. Thanks for having me on again. Always a pleasure, as always, talking about the Robins. And evening to you as well, James. Good evening.
And how are you, James? How are you getting on?
Evening, Scott. Good to be on here.
I tell you what, if anyone's watching this on YouTube now, it's no good for anyone listening on the podcast. For once, the sun's actually come out. Not only has it come out, it's decided to go right into my eye line. So if you think I've got a bit of a funny tan on my face, or a shade, or shadow, or whatever, it is genuinely a shadow. Just obviously perfect timing for doing this. We'll kick off with you, Scott. We're going to do a little bit of an old school mid-season report. You know, you remember them back at school when he'd be graded, probably a D or something like that, Scott. And we're going to say where Rovers are at the midpoint of the season so far. We've just played just over half the games, and then the boys are going to enjoy a short break with the England International next week. Robins are third in the league so far, 2 points behind Wigan and St Helens, 2 points above Warrington and Salford. The second top try scorers, they've made the third most meters, and they've made the second most clean breaks in Super League, the fourth for fewest errors, and the first for most offloads. How would you assess the Rovers season so far, Scott?
I think it's been absolutely great, hasn't it? You know, we deserve to be in third place. We've cemented third place now as well. We're not on level points with anybody else, so it's our position. Overall grades, I'd probably give us a B, maybe a low B. There's lots of room for improvement. We've seen that. The fact there's only 3 teams that have beat us is a major feat. Warrington have beat us twice out of the 4 we've lost. So we're in a position where there's only 3 teams that have beaten us. We've beaten every other team in the league so far, apart from, as I say, Warrington twice. And obviously we've got, you know, Salford who we've lost to as well. And of course, Catalan, we've got them coming up twice in quick succession very soon, haven't we? So that gives us an opportunity to bounce back against the teams that have beaten us. In all of those games, we've only really been well beaten by Catalan. The home game with Warrington, we was well in it. We probably should have won the game. Salford were better than us at Salford, but we didn't get hammered. We stayed in the game. And as I say, Warrington away, poor first half, but we got a better second half. The game, they had something to defend than they did Warrington. So we haven't been, even in the games we've lost, we haven't been well and truly beaten, apart from Catalan away. So for me, I would give us probably a B, low B, with room for improvement. I think there's a lot more to come from Rovers yet.
Yeah. And I suppose, James, they are handily placed, aren't they, for the second part of the season? You know, and if people that, you know, if you'd have been offered Rovers in third spot with only St Helens and Wigan above them come this stage of the season, if you was offered that at the start of the season, I guess most people had taken that. Obviously, the chance for the semi-final defeat was a bit of a frustration because you know, people wanted to go back to Wembley, especially after last year. But obviously, we've seen, haven't we, that this is a very good Wigan Warriors side so far this season. How would you assess Rovers' start to the season, James?
Very much like Scott. I think that sort of stops us getting to full sort of B plus or full B. Is just, I think, frustrating about that loss at home to Warrington. I think if you look at the league, you know, where we are now, like I said, we're cemented in third, and just, you know, that if we'd have beaten Warrington at home, we'd obviously been on 20 points. That bit's closer to potentially going joint top on Thursday night. But yeah, I think, you know, beginning of the season, if you just sort of said halfway through we're third in the league, yeah, you'd have beaten your hand, you'd have taken it. Going to be a tough run in, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it.
Yeah, and Scott, if you look to the second half of the season, I mean, what has been a little bit of our Achilles heel so far has been the away performances when we play outside of Yorkshire, isn't it? We've got 5 games at home. We've got 8 games away from home. If we're going to maintain the position that we're in or improve on it, we are going to have to pick up results away from home. There's no doubt about that.
We're going to have to pick up a win at Warrington, Wigan or Saints as well, I think. That really gives us, that will stamp our authority to say that we can win at these places. If we lose at Warrington, lose at Wigan, lose at Saints, people will just say, well, okay, they're probably no real better than we were last season. We've said we need to be better than 4th. Challenge Cup semi-final this year was a final last year. If we need to be better than 4th, then it'll be an improved season for me. But one of the wins has to come for me at Warrington, at Wigan or at Saints. If we can win one of those, it suggests that we are, able to challenge with the big dogs, so to speak, and we can, put ourselves in the mix come the end of the season. But if we get turned over at Warrington, Wigan and Saints again, people will just say, well, it's just okay. They're going to finish 4th, 5th, like they always have for a number of seasons now, or certainly for the last couple of seasons. So, yeah, it's a big challenge. But for me, we have to go into every game, believing that we can win every game. And I think the players do and the team do. Just sometimes you come up against good opposition, certainly on their own ground, like Wigan, Saints, Warrington. But I think we've got a beating of Warrington in us. I really do. We've come close twice, really. I know they beat us at their place a few weeks back, and they were dominated us first half. But second half, we were a lot better. I think we've got a defeat of Warrington in us. Saints, Wigan, who knows? But we've done it before. Why can't we do it again?
James, which players have stood out for you most during the first half of the season?
Yeah, sorry, so we lost you then. Yeah, I think it'd be an interesting game when we play Warrington in a few weeks' time. As Scott said, I think we can go in there with full of confidence, and I think if we can beat Warrington away again, it will set a marker down. The fact that we've got probably Wigan and I think Saints are about the 16th of August out there, something like that, and then Wigan's towards the back end of the season. I think if we can then go to those sort of places towards the back end of the season, again, it'll set a marker down for potentially making an impact in the playoffs and just showing that the likes of Wigan and Saints that when we are contenders. But as you said, it's becoming a monkey on our back, really, hasn't it? The fact that we're not seem to be unable to sort of win away over in Lancashire against these top teams, and I think that game against Warrington on 2nd of August or whenever it is on the Friday night, I think that's probably going to be the biggest game of the season so far. In terms of what it could mean for the end of the season layout and laying down that marker against other playoff teams.
Yeah, and James, if you look at the first half of the season, which players have stood out the most for you? I think we've got a bit of a lag there, James. So I'll go to you, Scott, and ask the same question. Who stood out the most for you?
I think what we've had is generally is a good team effort, really, to be fair. I think I mentioned a few weeks back that I think Jarve Whitbread's gone really, really well. I think he's been a good signing. I think consistently, I think 𝗬𝗂𝗀𝗃𝗃's been superb for us. I really do. People say, he don't do this and he don't do that, but he's been a top player in more games than he hasn't been. Even Friday night, as an example, he was just absolutely outstanding for me. A great signing, I think. But again, the workhorse Dean Hadley, he needs a lot of respect there. He goes about his business doing all the stuff that nobody else wants to do. So it's hard to pick out. Who's been the outstanding player, really. I think it's been a good team effort so far. And the good thing about it with Willie is that, if you don't play too well, somebody else he'll put somebody else in, won't he? He's not scared about replacing players like for like if need be, so it keeps the players on the toes. But I think what I will say, I think 𝗫𝗎𝗆𝗍𝗓 at fullback has been a revelation, and he is a fullback. And since he went to fullback, we've been a different team. So I think 𝗫𝗍𝗆𝗍 at fullback has been a revelation. I think he's been outstanding. Great signing.
Yeah, and it's funny you should mention 𝗫𝗍𝗆𝗍 there. Scott, because Evel's is currently Super League's top try as the most assists in Super League. Interestingly, Mikey Lewis is second, joint second with Mark Steed on 15. And you said about 𝗬𝗂𝗀𝗏𝗂𝗀, only Liam Marshall scored more tries than him this season. You know, and I think them two, in terms of attack, have been the standout players. I think for me, in defence, we've seen James Batchelor and Elliot Minchella at the fore, aren't we? You know, I think they're in the top 4 tacklers in Super League, and they're definitely added steelness to the side. The work rate, I suppose, the only frustration for me, Scott, is with James Batchelor. We haven't seen as much of him running those lines that we know he can run. He doesn't seem to be carrying the ball as much as he did last season, and I'd love to see him getting on the ball more because he's a real threat. And we saw that. We're going to come on to the Huddersfield game. We saw that when he made that pass inside for Byron to dive over. But he has got the ability to break the line and run at pace, and I'd like to see him try and find him a bit more.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think you're right. I totally echo what you've said there. Defensively, he's been outstanding this season. I don't think we have seen enough of him with the ball in hand in attack. I mean, some of the lines he ran last season were absolutely first class, and we don't seem to have seen those lines being run as much this season. His game has been much more focused defensively, really. Yeah, I don't think he's missed that many tackles either. You know, it just seems to go about his business, does Batch, doesn't he, without any sort of flair, or he just does his job. He's a bit like another Dean Adley in a way. He does all his job. He gets on the pitch, does what he has to do, does his job for the team and all his mates around him, and then, you know, he doesn't need to be flamboyant. He doesn't need to be off the cuff. But I would like to see him a lot more involved with his structure in attack more. Maybe Willie's changed it this season. I don't know. But he's certainly not as prevalent with ball in hand as he was last season, I don't think.
Yeah. James, I'm going to ask you, is the maybe the difficult question, is there anyone who could do better? Is there anybody who needs to improve?
Ooh, you know, I don't think there is. I don't think there is. I think Tyrone May. I think he obviously came with that big reputation in terms of the try assists he was getting at the Dragons last year. But I think he's been a bit of a slow burner. I think, you know, he was so on Friday against against Huddersfield. You know, he had a pretty ropey first half hour or so, but then came into his good, came good and showed us what he's capable of. But no, I think I'm struggling to find out anybody who's thinking, yeah, it's sort of. I think the fact that, you know, if we probably sort of, you know, after the first 2 or 3 games, you probably think, well, actually, you know, Hicko's probably not doing, you know, what we thought he'd be capable of. But the fact that he's been moved to centre is been a complete revelation and totally changed player. And, you know, for somebody who was apparently done, as somebody went online and said, you know, it's been fantastic, and that allowed Evans to go to fullback, and I think, you know, in his natural position, and just show what a great player Evans is. So I think across the whole park we've got some pretty good signings and some really solid performers, and just playing as a good solid team.
Yeah, Scott, Basil's watching on YouTube, and please, if you are watching live, get involved in the comment section. Basil's put first half of the season, in my opinion, my standout is 𝗬𝗂𝗀𝗏𝗏, of course, Tanganoa. Is that something you would concur with?
Yeah, I think, again, he's been a fantastic signing as 𝗬𝗂𝗏𝗏. I always think he seems to do better when he comes off the bench. You know, he comes on after about 20 minutes, but when he starts a game, he doesn't seem to have the impact that he has when he comes off the bench. You know, 20 minutes, 25 minutes in, he comes on and he starts running those lines and those really good angles when teams are just starting to, you know, maybe lose a bit of gas in the legs. I think 𝗬𝗏𝗏𝗏 is much better coming off the bench. When he starts a game, he doesn't seem to have that impact, as I've just said, but he has been a great signing for us. He really has. And some of the angles and some of the lines that 𝗬𝗏𝗏𝗏 runs are just absolutely first class. And if people like Mikey and, you know, Tyrone can get the ball to him, well, obviously Mikey on 𝗬𝗏𝗏𝗏's side, of course, going that way. 𝗫𝗏𝗏𝗏's bringing 𝗬𝗏𝗏𝗏 into play as well. And, you know, it's just... I think he's a great signing. I hope we can keep him fixed. I think that was Wakefield's problem, wasn't it? Keeping him on the pitch. Up to now, touch wood, we've been quite lucky with injuries, give or take 1 or 2, haven't we? So let's keep him on the pitch.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that about keeping him on the pitch, and I think he's definitely in much better physical condition than he was at Wakefield, and also he's not been asked to play a prop, which I think he did. He did have to at Wakefield, so I think he's definitely found a position that he's been able to cement in the side, and there's no doubt coming off the bench, he seems to be much stronger, and we'll talk about the potential lineup for the Castleford game later on in the Robin pod. James, one player who has stood out for me this season, and that's more so because of his level of consistency and the impact he's had in the middle of the pitch and the punch he's starting to pack, and he's becoming the player that we hoped he would be, and that's 𝗬𝗄𝗎𝗄. I think he's almost one of the first names on the team sheet now, and what we were able to do is rely on him to do the minutes and like I said, pack a punch. And touch wood, which I'm doing right now, he doesn't seem to be suffering physically. He looks in much better condition than he did last season. And he's another player who's out on the pitch more often than not. So for me, he's maybe not standout player, but someone who's maybe starting to live up to the billing and the expectations that we had on him when he first signed.
Yeah, totally agree on that. I think, last season, I think his season was disrupted quite a lot. Obviously, was through injuries and a few picks up a couple of suspensions. But I think this year he has just been. I think he's been. It's hard to pick one of our best players, but I think as Scott said, 𝗀𝗃𝗀𝗃's probably been for me the standout player, and Dean Hadley for his ultra consistency. But from in terms of progression on, what we'd expect, we're hoping for. I think 𝗬𝗂𝗎𝗄𝗎's been great, and I think he's just gone under the radar. I think I don't think a lot of opposition fans really rate him or don't really get him, but when he's on that pitch, he just makes that impact. Whether it's from starting or whether it's then comes off and then comes back on again after a spell, he just seemed to make the at least seems to make the yardage post contact every single time, and solid in defence, and I think he's having a great season.
Yeah, and Scott, I mean, it's an obvious one, and I make no apologies for it, but Mikey Lewis this season, I've put a tweet out a couple of weeks ago about Mikey Lewis, about him being the beating heart of the side, and he is a player who he doesn't go under the radar, but it's almost like because we've seen what he can do, and he's doing it so regularly at the moment, he almost goes a little bit under the radar because his level of performances are so high. We've maybe almost come to expect it, and for me, I think he's been a player who has really took on the mantle of being the one to guide the team around the pitch. And let's not forget, Scott, he's still such a young player, isn't he? He's still got a whole a whole career ahead of him, but he's doing it now at this young age, and the respect he commands from his teammates, many of whom are much older, much more experienced, played many more games than him. And I think for me, he's a real linchpin of the side, and I think for me, if I was going to pick one player who stood out maybe above all, it'd be Mikey Lewis.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think he's become a better player as well since he's matured quite a lot as well. He still needs that cheekiness. You still need that little edge to you of a kind of player like Mikey. I know top scrum halves have had it, haven't they, over the years? Players like, your Andy Gregory's and your Shaun Edwards and players like that, even Bobby Goulding's, all these players that got under your skin a little bit. You need that. But Mikey's learned to sort of control that a lot more now. He still has his little moments where he likes to wind the opposition up and get in the faces and stuff like that. But predominantly, he's matured like over a season. Even last season, he was being a bit pedantic and a little bit, niggly and stuff like that. And you're thinking, Mikey, just if you just reel that in a bit, you don't need to do that. Don't be giving penalties away. But he's matured over like a close season as this season's gone on. He's become, he's an old head on young shoulders, isn't he? And he really is starting to lead us around the park now, along with Tyrone on the other side of the pitch as well. We've got two really, really strong halfbacks now. And you're right. If Mikey Lewis is not in the team, I don't know what impact that would have until we see it. But I think the impact would be quite big. It'd be quite huge, because I don't think you can put anybody else in Mikey's shoes, can you? Even when he's been quiet for 10 minutes in a game, all of a sudden he'll just blast into a move, or he'll shrug somebody off and he's making a break for 30 yards. And you're like, where did that come from? But that he's always got that in his locker, always. Yeah, I think if we lose Mikey, hopefully touch wood, and I'm touching wood at the moment as well, but hopefully we never lose him to injury for a sustained period of time, because I think we'd struggle without him, I really do.
Yeah, and Scott, I need to be careful that I don't clip these little bits where we talk about touching wood. Otherwise, if we play that in isolation, people might start to get worried about what we actually are touching. Right, it was a game against Huddersfield which tipped Rovers over the halfway point of the season. 32 points to 6 victors. Ryan Hall with 2 tries, 𝗬𝗂𝗀𝗏 with 2 tries, 𝗦𝗣𝗢𝗀𝗏 and Tyrone May. Mikey Lewis with 4 conversions. James, it was a bit of a funny old game, wasn't it? Because both coaches, Ian Watson and 𝗬𝗢𝗢𝗏𝗏, said that the scoreline maybe doesn't reflect the game, because it was a tussle at times. I think Huddersfield tried to rough us up a little bit, and we saw that with some of the off the ball stuff that they was doing, some of the antics in and around the ruck. But ultimately, it proved to be a very, well, in the end, quite an easy victory, wasn't it? I'm not surprised by the scoreline, because I don't think Huddersfield really got into the game in terms of doing anything attacking wise.
No, they didn't. I think. Totally agree. I think for me, it was a really horrible game. Like you said, it was just really weird. It's like that first 30 minutes or so, it's just like thinking, I had this feeling it's going to be one of those nights. And it's clear what the Huddersfield game plan was to do, was basically come and disrupt Rovers, come and frustrate them, and try and do a sort of smash and grab on us. And then they got that interception try, and you're thinking, it's just going to be one of those nights. And we just could not get any momentum going. But then I think we just seemed to click. And I think once we'd got, those 3 tries with, 2 the first half, 1 at the start of the second half, they had nothing to offer. I think I was surprised when I saw the stats that you published the other day about the play of the balls in the Rovers 20, in the opposition 20. Because at the game, I was thinking they've just hardly been down Rovers' end. But they had ended up having more play of the balls inside Rovers 20 than Rovers had in the Huddersfield one. And I think the fact they just couldn't break through was probably testament to the strength of Rovers' defence, but also just the fact they just had no creativity and just had offered nothing. And I think in the end, I thought the result was a fair reflection of the game. I think Ian Watson probably deluded himself, who thinks we should have been closer. If anything, you think about all that ball we had in the first 20-25 minutes and chances in their half where we just blew them on the first tackle, throwing the ball into touch. It could have even been more. So I think, good win in the end, but just a horrible game overall.
Yeah, and Scott, I mean, it was his Huddersfield's try. I mean, obviously scored during the minutes round of applause for Rob Burrows on the 7th minute. I mean, it was a bittersweet moment. It was a bit of nobody knew what to do with it. They didn't know whether to keep clapping, whether to stop, whether to take in the try. And I mean, yeah, typical. It was just a funny moment, but it was great to see so many Robin supporters obviously pay the respect to the late great Rob Burrows, CBE, who we've managed to speak about so well in the previous Heritage cast that we did with Scott Taylor and Craig Eskerett. So obviously, yeah, very, very bittersweet moment. And thankfully for the Robins, though, Scott, that was probably the only blip during the game, because once Tyrone May seemed to get into the game, that's when the Robins really then pushed on. And I think Tyrone May, I'll admit, and 𝗬𝗢𝗍𝗏 has already said that it wasn't a great first half an hour from Tyrone May. But then as soon as he put that kick in for 𝗬𝗂𝗀𝗏, for him to score his first try of the game, it was almost like a light bulb moment, wasn't it? And he never looked back from that moment.
Yeah, I think just going back to the ball that Tyrone threw out for their interception by Masters, I think that's the first time an away team scored a try at Craven Park to a standing ovation. Although obviously it wasn't for Huddersfield, as we know, it was for Rob. But you just got to keep clapping, haven't you? You can't, it was for Rob at the end of the day. It was like Huddersfield's try wasn't even acknowledged whatsoever. They just put 4 points on the board. But everybody was given a standing ovation to Rob, which was fantastic and obviously thoroughly deserved. And it was fantastic to see the whole stadium rise as one and give him a round of applause. But back to Tyrone, you're right. The first half an hour, I mean, he threw the ball out for the interception. He wasn't quite on his game, and a few of the lads around me, you know, are slating him a little bit and giving him a bit of an hard time. But I'll tell you what he does. When he's not on his game with ball in hand, he stands up defensively. And he never, ever, hardly ever misses a tackle. So even when he's struggling himself, he'll still defend like hell for the team. And it's like, you're right, it's like a light bulb moment. He'll throw one ball out or one kick in or something will come off for him. And then it's like his inspiration for the rest of the game. And then he goes for the rest of the game. And that second half, he just controlled it. It was, I know it's the old cliche that people say, but it was like playing in a dinner suit. You know, he was showing the ball, showing it there everywhere. I think the ball to 𝗕𝗂𝗃, and then obviously the try that he scored as well, you know, when he got the ball down in the corner, that just gives him that light bulb moment. And from then on, he just controlled the game. But yeah, as I said, I'll just reiterate, when he's not been that good with ball in hand, he stands up defensively. And you can't fault a player like that. If you're giving everything in defence, the attack will come.
No, and it is part of that, isn't it? That even when you're not in your game, what can you still contribute to the team? What can you do if you're not doing something well? Well, what else can you do? And you're right. You know, he's already been noted by me about his defence. You know, he's normally over 20 tackles a game, which is for a player in that position is pretty rare, to be honest. You know, he's putting his body on the line in terms of defence. He ain't going out hiding, he ain't pushing himself further away from where the action is. So credit to him. And James, we saw another bit of magic from him, didn't we? The next try of the game, a fifth and last play, which we don't see too many times from the Robins. Normally, it's a kick from Mikey Lewis to try and get some field position. Made a break down the right edge. Batchelor gets the ball and then just gives a little cute inside pass to May, and then the acrobatic finish from May. Something, I mean, I've not seen him do that before, especially not in a Rovers shirt. Showing that he's got a little bit of everything in his locker, and it was a great finish. And you know, I think that's where you know, I still can't get my head around it how he's getting stick from some people, but they're the magic moments that he comes up with in a game, which ultimately, you know, did propel us, I think, to the victory and probably the try of the game as well, James.
Yeah, it was. It came at the sort of, you know, obviously the right moment as well. I think they just got back to 12 to 13 men. Or was it still about a minute or so to go? And just before half time, you know, it was a great try, and just what we needed. And like I said, I've never seen him do anything like that. It's just how that, you know, great chasing kick through, going for the high ball, plucking it out of the air and scoring the try. But never seen him do anything like that. But just going back to, you know, point Scott was making about his defence, I think that for me is the thing I was most surprised about from him. I think, you know, we like I said, we always knew he's good at creating tries because of how many he did for Catalan last year, but that defensive qualities he's got, you know, I've been staggered by it, and you know, really, it's just adds another dimension to the whole game. And as you said, you know, if he's not involved from an attacking point of view, you can then rely on him from a defensive point of view. But no, I think, you know, that sort of try just before half time, I thought probably gave him a lot more confidence, and just allowed then from the second half to him to basically run the game.
Yeah, it was something that happened though, Scott, just before 𝗕𝗂𝗃's try and May's kick through to him. Something that happened, which I think ultimately had the biggest bearing on the game, and that was Jez Litton being taken off and 𝗬𝗢𝗡𝗄𝗃 coming on in his place. Now, Litton didn't get back out onto the pitch, and Willie Peters has said in his press conference this week that he did want to get him back out there, but the injury to Batchelor meant it was difficult. Interesting that it was a tactical switch so early on in the game. You don't often see hookers interchange that early on, especially when Jez Litton is on the pitch. But I think the introduction of 𝗬𝗢𝗡𝗄𝗃, that increased speed around the ruck, that dart he's got to go away where the opposition aren't quite sure whether he's going to pass it, whether he's going to duck under, whether he's going to try and get a penalty from an offside defender. But I think that was probably I know Tyrone May got man of the match, but I think it was 𝗬𝗢𝗡𝗄𝗃's introduction which really swung the game in our favour.
Is Rovers' number one hooker. That's been made clear by Willie Peters. Hull Kingston Rovers are a massively different team with Matt Parcell on the pitch. Massively different team. As you say, speed around the ruck, his runs from dummy half, that sideways run that he does, then darts through the gaps. Just a little run around for his try was a perfect example of what Matt Parcell can bring to OKR. He's going to be a massive loss to us next season if and when it is announced that he is definitely leaving. I mean, it seems it's going to be that way. How do you replace Matt Parcell? I mean, the evidence was there to see. Ches is a very different player to Matt Parcell. They're two very, very different hookers. But what Matt does is that he leads you around the park with all his experience. And I know Ches can do that as well, but there's something about Matt Parcell that just brings an X factor to the hooker role when he's on the pitch. And he gets the better out of other players around him as well. He's going to be a massive loss. I don't know how we'll replace him because we're going to need another hooker at some point, you know, to back up for Ches if Ches is going to be our number one, which he is. How do you replace Matt Parcell? I just think we're a far superior team with Matt Parcell on the pitch.
Well, I suppose, Scott, that is a conundrum, isn't it? Because at the moment, we've got two hookers who, if either one of them plays or starts, it doesn't weaken us. They are both, you know, pretty much number one hookers. In any other team, you know, they're pretty much, either one of them would be the main hooker. We've got two. So the conundrum, I suppose, for next season is, do you go down the same route again and bring in another hooker who's almost a number one hooker as well? Or do you bring in a hooker who's a supporting player and plays a supporting role to Litton, and obviously then Litton plays much more minutes, and the supporting hooker, you know, doesn't play as many minutes. Parcell has got that ability to come on and change the game like he did. It's going to be interesting to see which route they'll go down next season, Scott.
No, it certainly is. Yeah, it certainly is. I mean, I don't know whether somebody like Danny Richardson could slip into hooker. It's interesting that obviously he's in the squad again for Thursday night. We'll come on to that, I'm sure, in a bit. But, you know, can Danny Richardson slot in there at hooker if need be? I don't know if he's played. Might have played a couple of times for Cass before. I know he's predominantly a halfback. And for me, you need an out-and-out hooker, really. But you're asking an hooker to come in, aren't you, who's predominantly going to play second fiddle to Ches, but he's going to be a backup hooker out in a way. Are you going to sign a first-class, first-team hooker, the like of Matt Parcell? I just can't see it. I don't see where there is one out there, you know, who you can bring in, unless you go abroad, but all our quota spots are full. And there was talk of the South Sydney lad, weren't they, for a few weeks back, weren't they? But I don't think that's going to come off. But we do need another hooker. But can we replace Matt Parcell? So it's a tough ask. And I think for me, Matt Parcell, I know there's rumours he wants to go back to Australia and start his business and get his family back home again, but he's only 31. You know, he's nowhere near the end of his career, is he? He's still got so much left to offer. I just wish he was staying in a rugby shirt, but it doesn't seem to be the case.
Yeah, Bill Leyland at the London Broncos, he's the name that I keep hearing about as a potential replacement. So
that's Ollie's brother, isn't it?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see who they do bring in. Like you said, I think it was Cook at Sydney, South Sydney Rabbitohs, but obviously there's no quote spot. Obviously, that leads to speculation. Well, if they do bring him, who's going to depart, etc., etc. So, you know, I'm sure over the next month or so, next couple of months, we can get more clarity on who will be our second equal choice hooker next season, whatever that may be. James, we've already mentioned about Matty Parcell's score in the second half. 𝗂𝗂𝗀 scores. I mean, we've mentioned that Tyrone May's dive over, you know, the fifth and last play was probably the try of the game. Well, this was a very close runner-up to that, wasn't it? Because we saw a great offload from May to Evells. Evells then gives it back to 𝗂𝗂𝗀, and rather than 𝗂𝗂𝗀 busting along to go for the corner, smartly, he cuts back inside, goes against the opposition defenders, and he scoops in for an easy try in the end. But it was fantastic attacking play again. And we've already talked about Evells and his assists. You know, another one for the season.
Yeah, it was, and I think it's quite interesting how 𝗂𝗂𝗀 and Evells seem to form quite a decent partnership on that right edge when Evells come to the line. I think there's been three or four tries now this season where they have combined, and combined it's led to a try. I think there was obviously one with the back pass. Can't remember which game it was. Back pass in back inside, and one at London as well. But yeah, it was. I think that one just, for me, I was sort of confident when there was 16-6 up, but that one just killed it all stone dead anyway. But yeah, again, another try for 𝗂𝗂𝗀. We just, you know, as I said earlier, moving him to centre, and he's probably in his natural position, has just been, you know, a revelation, and just thinking, you know, yeah, it's where we should have been at the beginning of the season. But fortunately, you know, we got it sorted early on in the season, and we're sort of reaping the benefits of it now.
And James, what is it about players, players who used to play for that lot, seem to come up against Rovers when they play for their opposition team and have a bit of a chip on the shoulder? And we saw that, didn't we, in the 70th minute when 𝗲𝗲𝗄𝗏 decided to, well, I don't even know what he was trying to do. He was much ado about nothing in the end, wasn't it? Ultimately, though, he paid the ultimate price for it. But 𝗲𝗲𝗄𝗏 madness, and even I was stood in the well, and even when he was coming off the pitch, I think somebody from the Rovers dugout had said something to him, and then he tried to go again when he was going down the tunnel. So just seems to be something when we come up against players who play for that lot, they still seem to be carrying this chip on the shoulder.
Yeah, I mean, he's a bit of a grub when he played for them, like anyway, I wanted, but I just, yeah, I don't know what he was trying to prove. I think it was obviously his debut, so I don't know if he was trying to sort of make a mark, but obviously what started it was he just clobbered into Mikey Lewis, and then sort of Minchella, as anything any good forward and good captain does, stuck up for his halfback, and so I went after him, and yeah, 𝗲𝗲𝗄𝗏 ended up coming off second best, and you know, watching it back afterwards, he was just chuntering away to Watson on the way back out to down to the dressing room, was saying, "What the hell, you know, have I been sent off for?" Oh, yeah, you've been sent off because you're a bit of a grub, mate.
Yeah, exactly. Less said about him, the better. Scott, a magic moment, or two magic moments. It's a moment that I think a lot of people have been anticipating for a long time, hoping it would probably come a little bit sooner than what it did. But Ryan Hall equaling the Super League try scoring record, of course. He equalled Danny Maguire's record, a good friend of his and former Hull Kingston Rovers assistant coach and player. To equal it is a special moment, Scott. To then go and beat it in the same game, almost sort of rolling back the years and scoring the try that would become accustomed to in maybe his earlier careers. Of course, he's reinvented himself as a player, as a real barnstorming powerhouse, running the ball out of back play. I think for his record-breaking try, though, he scored the kind of try that we all expected to see him do week in, week out when he was at the Leeds Rhinos and when he was winning titles and grand finals and all stuff like that. Fantastic moment for him, and it was great to see the response that he got from the crowd.
Yeah, absolutely. There was an energy about the place, wasn't there? When he got his first one, there was only about 5 minutes to go, but I think there was a feeling that because they'd gone to 12 men, there was some space out there on that pitch, if we could get the ball out to Ryan, there was always a chance that he was going to get that second try that night. I felt it. I thought he could always get it. And you're right, that second try, what the way he just stepped inside and then just put his head back and went for the line. That was old school Ryan Hall. And many of his 270 odd tries that he scored have been scored like that. But the one to equal Danny's try on Friday, what a pickup that was. For a big man, for a bloke who's 6'3" or whatever he is, and I don't know, 16, 17 stone, that ball was nearly low to the ground. The way he gathered it and went over the line with it, he had the skill of an halfback doing that. It was an absolutely brilliant take to level it. And then he just totally deserved that try. And I think the crowd were going a bit more berserk than Ryan was. He tried to downplay it a bit, didn't he? I think he said in his interview with Sky, I wasn't going to make too much of it, until all the lads ran over and like all palled on him and jumped him and what have you. But what a player! What a player! How lucky have we been to see him in a Rovers shirt the last four and odd years? He's just so lucky that OKR have had Ryan Hall in now. To see one of the greatest British wingers of all time in a red and white shirt has been an absolute treat for us, hasn't it?
To be honest, Scott, as well, my lad who's 8 years old who plays rugby, there's not many players or people in sport that I say to him, look up to, emulate, this is what you should do. I tell you what, Ryan Hall's the exception to that. Not just necessarily what he's done in his career and how he plays, just the way he carries himself, how humble he is, how respectful he is. Obviously, he's a student of the game. He takes his profession very seriously. He's reaped the benefits of that. But you saw in the interviews after the game on Sky, he's a family man. You know, that's is the utmost important thing to him. And there's so much that we can take away from him, let alone his rugby ability and what he's done on the pitch.
Yeah, the bloke's an absolute gentleman. And if there's an epitome of how to look after yourself when perhaps you're coming to the end of your career, how, you know, your nutrition, your diet, you know, preserving your energy, recovery, everything epitomises Ryan Hall. I've got a good mate of mine. His little lad started going to Rovers just in like the last 2 or 3 years, and he absolutely idolises Ryan Hall. You know, he got to meet him at the I think it was at the RSG night back in the last year. And Ryan couldn't do enough, sat him on his knee, you know, signed his autograph book, had photos with him. This little lad was looking up to his hero, and his hero was giving every single bit of moment that he had to this little lad. And he couldn't believe it. He couldn't believe that Ryan Hall was in a photograph with him. But that's Ryan. He's just such one of the most wonderful, loveliest fellas you'll ever meet. As you say, a true family man. On and off the pitch is the epitome of how to conduct yourself. And as you said, that's even without his rugby. Even without his rugby, as a person, he's just a good, genuine, loyal human being. And you can't ask for any more than that from anybody.
Yeah. Not only is he one of my son's favourite player, he's also my wife's. Now, I don't think that's necessarily because of his rugby ability. I think it's more so when he's strolling around the pitch at London with his top off. But I may be wrong. James, I mean, he's been at the Robins 4 seasons. In 2021, he scored 16 tries, 2022, 15 tries, 2023, 15 tries. This season, James, is already on 10 tries with just under half of the season still to go. Quite ironic, wouldn't it be, that in his final season with the Robins, it could be his most tries scored in a season whilst with the Robins, still contributing massively out on the pitch. I must admit, James, I am still a little bit, a bit wary of some of his defensive plays and some of his reads and his positioning at times. But there's no doubt when he's got ball in hand, he's a dangerous player. And most importantly, he's contributing not only in sort of back play with the meters made, he's contributing in terms of tries scored as well. So he's still got it all, hasn't he?
He has. You know, every time, you know, I go to Rovers and I see Ryan Hall play, I still pinch myself thinking, you know, we've got this Super League great playing for our club, and we're getting to see him play and just stop, you know. Yeah, age is going to catch up with him, but the standards he's set, you know, in his past career is bringing them into Rovers, and that's going to have, you know, probably it's going to be hard to measure the impact that's going to have on the young players around the club. You sort of summed it really perfectly, saying he is a role model. You know, as a role model for the young players who say, you know, work hard, look after yourself. You know, work as a team, be part of the team, and this is how far you can get. It's just phenomenal what is still, you know, he's achieved while he's been at Rovers and still got to achieve. And just going back to the 2 tries on Friday night, you know, they were fantastic tries. As Scott said, the guy, you know, for a big guy to get down as low as he did, to pick that ball and put it on the line for his first try was just incredible. And the second try, I said, it was just rolling back the years. You know, that we were behind him, you know, when that gap opened up, and you thought, nobody's going to stop him here. You know, you could see, I think, the excitement, even though he's running, the excitement, you know, he was going to get that, break the record. But it's just also, well, you know, the knowledge of the game, and when you just listen to him in post-match interviews and the way he sort of talks about the game, and sort of just makes it easy for people, you know, who are not involved in the game, who know a lot of detail about it, to understand what's going on and thinking, oh yeah, I can see that and I can see this, and just really, just, you know, he's just like, yeah, just amazing guy. And he's my wife's favourite player as well. So,
Scott, I think what really stood out for me is that when he spoke, he said after everything he's achieved with the Leeds Rhinos and you know, an absolutely stellar career with them in terms of silverware, he considers himself just as much as Robin now, you know, on par with whatever he's achieved there. And I think, you know, we're talking about what Ryan's given us, but I think we've given him a lot as well. I do think as a supporter base, but as a club as well, because don't forget when he was coming back from Sydney, you know, the Roosters, many people thought he was done. People didn't really want to go near him at the time. And I'm not saying we gave him a lifeline, because no doubt he'd have ended up somewhere else. But it's almost like that opportunity to come to the Robins gave him the opportunity to reinvent himself and push him forward. And now, you know, that's only my opinion. I'm sure Ryan Hall might say something completely different. But there just seems to be that mutual respect between us as a club, us as a fan base, as a supporters, and Ryan Hall as a player. And I think that's it's when you get that synergy, that's when, you know, special things happen. And that's when heroes are made, that's when legends are made, because it's mutual.
I think that's the case without a shadow of a doubt. Obviously, when he was over in Sydney, it was 2 years over there for him, plagued with injury. He very rarely played a game. And I think everybody thought when we signed him and brought him back to the UK that we're getting an injured player, we're getting a crop, so to speak, and he's come for, you know, is this the last payday? You know, because he won't be on, nobody knows what he earns, but he won't be on peanuts, that's guaranteed. You know, he's earned that, you know, throughout his career. So when we brought him back in, are you thinking it's going to be a one-season wonder? Do we sign him? He'll either succeed with us or he'll fail. If he succeeds, he's going to go back to Leeds or go to Wigan or something like that. He never has. He stayed with us, you know, and that's the loyalty of the man. That's the loyalty of Ryan Hall. And I think we saw on Friday night as well, when he got his second try, when all the East Stand was singing Ryan Hall, "You're my Ryan Hall" to him, he actually tapped the badge. He tapped the badge and pumped his fist in the air. I don't believe for 1 minute Ryan Hall didn't mean that. And there are a lot of players who are badge kissers, who kiss the badge because they can just kiss the badge. It's an easy thing to do, and you want the fans to. You're doing the right thing for the fans. Ryan Hall totally means when he taps that badge that he's a Robin forever. And I think we welcomed him into that, and now he's paid us back to a certain extent in what he's achieved over the last 4 years on the wing for OKR. And to run down that, I mean, there were two really good stands in rugby league for me. The East Stand at Craven Park, and to be fair to Leeds, when that South Stand gets going, you know, back in the day when they won everything, it must have been a dream to run down that South Stand at Headingley as well, on the old South Stand I'm talking about, when it was all standing. And then he's come to the East Stand at Craven Park and he gets the same thing as well on his left-hand side. It must be a dream for any winger to sort of be, you're being egged over the line, aren't you, to score every single try that you do. And for me, I think he's probably one of the greatest British wingers of all time. And his try scoring record and just the man he is evidence to that. Very lucky to have him. Very, very lucky to have him. And he'll always be a Robin.
Well, I was going to ask you, Scott. I mean, you know, the great wingers of Hull Kingston Rovers. We're talking about the Steve Hubbards, the Clive Sullivans. You know, where does he feature in that list of wingers who have played for Hull Kingston Rovers?
We've had some good ones in my time of watching. Just going back to Sully, I was only a young lad when I first saw Sully, as we've discussed before. Clive was a very, very, very special player. But in the modern day game, you know, I think Ryan is right up there, along with obviously Gary Clark as well, who scored hundreds of tries for Rovers as well. You know, Gary scored. You know, he was a fine winger, was Gary, on the right hand side. You know, so Gary was right up there as one of my favourite wingers of OKR's era through the 1980s. But on the left-hand side for me, I think he's been, without a shadow of a doubt, in my era, probably Clive apart, the best winger that I've ever seen play for OKR by a country mile, to be fair, by a country mile.
What do you reckon, James? Where would you put him on the list?
Oh, it's really hard to say, but like Scott, I've sort of just I remember Sully from when I was sort of younger and started watching Rovers, and he was a hell of a player. And we've had some great wingers since then. But I think, you know, for me, he's certainly up there. He's got to be in the top 5, definitely, because I think because, as we keep saying, he came off 2 years at the Roosters where he'd been plagued by injuries. Rovers took a punt on him. He could easily come into the club and say, "Okay, I'll play for 2 years, run out my contract. I don't need to prove anything to anybody." And he hasn't. You know, he's bought into the club. you can tell, you say that the club means a lot to him, because by the same token, you know, we've given him that chance to sort of say, get back to what everybody knew Ryan Hall was all about. Having, you know, forget his 2 years in Sydney and say, you know, Ryan Hall is one of the best wingers the British game's ever had. In fact, the whole of Super League's ever had, you know, when you include Australia as well. And, you know, I say it's just been that role model that's going to be benefit the whole club through, you know, for the future. It's something that's something you can't put a measure on. You know, it's about that culture. And we've spoken before on the podcast about, you know, having that culture. And, you know, look at the successful team that, you know, the Leeds, your Wigans, your Saints. They've had that winning culture, that mentality all the way through. And people like Ryan Hall bring that into the club in spades. And if you're a young kid in the academy or the scholarship, and you don't pick up from that, then, you know, you're probably in the wrong game. But yeah, he's certainly up there for me.
Yeah, and that's why stats only paint part of the picture, you know, in terms of appearances and tries scored or whatever stat you want to use. You know, legacy, impact is also how you measure somebody's time at a club, and that's why, you know, some players get the hero status as well, because it's not just the numbers, it's the actual impact that they had on people, the changing culture, whatever it might be. So yeah, but like we said, the season's not over yet. Just under half of the season still to go, and I'd love to see Ryan Hall finish it with the most tries he scored in a season for the Robins, and extend that lead in terms of how many tries he scored in Super League, because Josh Charnley is still chomping at the bit to chase him down. So the more tries Ryan Hall can get, the better. And hopefully we'll see more tries scored by Ryan Hall on Thursday night when the Robins take on the Castleford Tigers, a team that is struggling towards the bottom of the league. Features the 21-man squad for Castleford actually features 5 Robins, couple of injuries. People who are not going to be taken to the field against Castleford for the Robins are James Batchelor. He came off against Huddersfield on Friday night. He actually came off with a hamstring injury, but it's an ankle injury that's keeping him out. And then 𝗪𝗇𝗄𝗎𝗄, he's missing. So coming into the squad to replace them two are Joe Burgess and Zach Fishwick. Joe Burgess is back after he had his knee clear out, a bit of a knee operation. He's back. He's been training all week. He's fully fit and ready to go. Scott, I'll come to you. Obviously, there is going to be changes probably in the starting 13, definitely in the squad for the game on Thursday night. Are you expecting Burgess to come straight back in, or do you think Broadbent's done enough to retain his place in the side?
I think he's done enough. I think the fact he's playing against his former club as well, I think he'd be gutted if he gets dropped and Burgess comes in, because I don't think Broadbent's done anything to be dropped. I think he's been great on that right wing, even though it's not really his most natural position. He's done a job there. But I've got a feeling that Willie does prefer an out-and-out winger, and obviously Budgie offers that to him. So I have a feeling that Burgess will come in, but I think Broadbent would be very disappointed to lose his place, and very unlucky to lose his place as well. I don't know whether you could accommodate Jack elsewhere, whether you can, I don't know, can you carry him on the bench and bring him on? I don't know. I don't think you probably can, but you know, he either starts or he doesn't. But I think Burgess will come back in, because I think Willie likes an out-and-out winger, a winger who is a winger, I think. So, but Jack's certainly done nothing wrong to lose his place.
What about you, James? I do agree with Scott in terms of, I think Burgess is one of the players under Willie Peters who, when fit, pretty much gets that starting spot as long as he is fit. And the fact that he's now available after some time off due to injury, obviously he had his concussion and he had his knee clear out. I think it is harsh on Broadbent, but like Scott said, he's playing out of position. Although he has done well since coming in, he was a player, let's not forget. Similar to when we signed Corey Hall from Wakefield, where it was almost talked about as a player for the future, for the next season, not necessarily for now. He's come in there and done a sterling job, and he hasn't really let us down, has he? Because it can be difficult coming into a new side and having to hit the ground running. Broadbent's definitely done that, but I do think it will be Burgess who gets the nod on Thursday night.
Yeah, I think agree with both of you that. I think from Broadbent's point of view, he's done nothing wrong. I think he's come in, like I said, played in an unaccustomed position. I think he's done really well. Even when he played in centres, he's doing well. But I think Willie Peters does like to play players, in their best position. And you got to think if Burgess is fit, he'll certainly probably coming back into the side. And then where would you put Broadbent? You could say, well, actually, you'd put him back into, maybe put him into centre instead of 𝗲𝗂𝗧. But again, think of the last few games, 𝗲𝗂𝗧 sort of stepped on again from to where I think we were the 𝗲𝗂𝗧 we saw last season. So again, it'd be a hard call to drop Tom, but it just highlights the strength and depth we've now got within the squad, that we're having these sort of discussions where you've got a player like Broadbent who's come in, done nothing wrong, and thinking, well, actually, he could end up out of the team. But then by dropping him and bringing somebody else in, you're not weakening the team. You're perhaps making it a bit slightly stronger, but only perhaps marginally, but still a stronger team. Even with him in there, it'd still be a strong team. So yeah, it's going to be a difficult call for Peters, that one.
Yeah, and Scott, obviously, he's got another big call to make in terms of what to do around the hooker situation, 𝗬𝗡𝗄𝗧. We've already just been talking about the impact he made against Huddersfield, and just how important he is for the Robins. There's no real like-for-like replacement. I watched the reserves a little bit on Saturday. I went down to Craven Park to see how they were getting on. And I did see Richardson play at hooker a little bit while he was out there, and he does seem to be the logical choice, not just because of his ability to play hooker, the fact that he's a playmaker as well, can slot in the half. Also gives you the option possibly to start moving things around, because let's not forget we've seen 𝗵𝗂𝗏 line up at hooker, whether he's spelled there. I'm thinking Richardson, but I can't 100% nail that he's going to be the one who features off the bench.
No, and I think, as Willie's proven in the past, he is also happy to play a hooker for 80 minutes, well, if need be. So it might be that Jez does the full 80. 𝗬𝗡𝗏 did the full 80 at London, didn't he? Just a few weeks back. So it's not one for not saying to a hooker, you're going to do the full 80. So that might be the case for Jez. You might need a bit of cover off the bench, though. I would think that it'd go with 3 forwards and a back on the bench. And your natural choice for that back position, I would think, would be Danny Richardson. The fact that he can fill in at hooker if need be, as you said, he can fill in the halves. He's a bit of a universal back and he's a playmaker. He can kick goals. He's creative. So I think he will get one of the substitute places, I would have thought, with Danny Richardson. Again, against his former club as well, which is always going to add a bit of spice to any game, I'm guessing. But I have a feeling that you might see Jez do 80 minutes. As long as you don't get injured during the game, you might see him do the full 80, because Willie's done it before.
James, if we look towards the bench, we saw Sam Luckley. We hadn't even spoke about how well he performed against Huddersfield. 8 carries, 80 metres, average gain of 10 metres. He's someone who's really cementing that position in terms of coming off the bench and making an impact, isn't he? And it's interesting that Willie Peters said about the Huddersfield game that he wanted to bring some legs onto the pitch. 𝗬𝗡𝗄𝗏 was part of that. 𝗬𝗏𝗏 was part of that. And Sam Luckley was part of that. So you think he's pretty much nailed on to come on from the bench. Will Brown get a chance? He played for the reserves on Saturday. He was the 18th man against Huddersfield. Be interesting if the game against Castleford is another opportunity to maybe bring him in. We're not quite sure where we're at with George King and where he fits into the side at the moment. Departing the Robins at the end of the season, but his game time is definitely diminished, and whatever's gone on behind the scenes there, we're not quite sure. So whether he gets the opportunity to play. And Staunton, he seems to have maybe stepped up a gear a little bit over the last few weeks, and he's played his way into Willie Peters' plans. So it's interesting to see how we line up. And we saw against London, a team who was at the bottom of the league, Castleford in a similar position, that Willie Peters isn't afraid to make some radical or big calls and changes to the side.
No, yeah, you're right. I think Sam Luckley. I think he comes off the bench. He does make that impact. I think he's another one of those players who's, as the season's progressed, he's sort of got better and better. And as the season's progressed. It's the same with Matt Staunton. I think it's interesting, obviously, that he's apparently supposedly signed for Wakefield as well for next season, but it doesn't seem to be affecting him to any degree, and he's sort of again stepped up. So no, I think there's going to be some interesting selections there. He'll probably do throw a curveball and put @𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 on the bench or something like that, just to sort of give him a run out, because they've not played Super League since September 2022, and apparently he's been doing pretty well for Featherstone on dual reg. So I might just say, yeah, you got there, Zach, and show what you can do and put some continue to put some more pressure on these other forwards.
Scott, I know the old adage is that you shouldn't take anyone lightly, and you take each game at a time. You'd be very, very surprised if we came away from Castleford with anything other than 2 points on Thursday.
Yeah, but I think we're in a situation. I don't think Castleford are anywhere near as bad as London or even that lot across the river. I think Castleford are a better team than that. And if you look through their squad, they've got a few decent players. But if you look at us man for man, there isn't a Castleford player that you'd put ahead of any of our players. So you've got to be realistic and say we should be coming away with 2 points from Castleford. Weldon Road, as I like to call it, will always be Weldon Road to me. I really hope that we do. I think we should. I think we will. But I don't think it'll be easy as people think. So if we're not 30 points up by half time, don't be surprised, because you've got to earn the right to win the games, haven't you? Even before a ball's kicked or a ball's passed, you've got to earn the right to win the game. You've got to win the game before you win the game. And we can't just roll up there thinking we're just going to roll this lot over. I know it was after a Challenge Cup final, but they ran Wigan close really on Sunday, really well. And Wigan put a full team out. There was only 1 or 2 players missing for Wigan. And I know it's the hangover of the Challenge Cup final, and it's always the same. And they've been probably on the booze for a few days celebrating a Challenge Cup win. But they've only lost by 2 points to a Wigan team. So it's not going to be easy. We've got to go and win the game first and earn the win before we even win it, I think. But we should come away with the 2 points.
And James, this weekend we'll see the squad announced for the mid-season test against France over in Toulouse. Are you expecting any Rovers players to feature in the side?
I'd like to think Mikey or 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 would be getting a spot over to south of France. I think, they both obviously deserved it this season. I think going back to something we talked about earlier in the podcast about how Mikey's sort of become more mature, and I think you could probably put that down to the time spent in England camp at the back end of last season. Being around the likes of being coached by Shaun Wanes and around some more experienced players. I think he's sort of certainly we're seeing the benefits of that now, and I think it's something Willie Peters has referred to. So yeah, I'd like to think Mikey Lewis is going to be in there, because at the end of the day, I mean, he'd probably go something like Williams, won't he? But and Harry Smith. But you've got a series coming up against Samoa at the back end of the season. It's a good opportunity for Shaun Wanes to put a few more players in there to sort of say, actually, how can you sort of deal and sort of step up on the international stage? Mikey's shown that he can do that, and it's just hopefully he's given an opportunity. And I think from Jess's point of view, again, it's sort of being able to sort of have that experience and stepping up from regular Super League to that international level.
Yeah, and Scott, I do think Mikey Lewis and Jez Litton will be in that squad. The one player that I would like to see get some recognition is Elliot Minchella, and the way he's stepped up in terms of his leadership. I very think he is very much a Shaun Wanes player. The way he plays, the defensive responsibilities that he's taken on, but not just that. The way he conducts himself out on the pitch as a player, how he leads his team, and how we saw with the Mike Lewis and Cervello incident, he goes in to protect his players. I do think he's a Shaun Wanes player, and it'd be great for him to get some recognition, whether it's just in the squad, and we pray that, Willie Peters said, we want these players selected for England, because it's testament to what we're doing as a club and what these players are doing individually. But Minchella's one player that I would like to see get some recognition in internationally.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And I think, like James has just said as well, and I think like Shaun Wanes might have said it himself, I think there are a few rumours that he may be picking a few fringe players who might not have played for England before, just to give them a little run out, a little test out. Is there any point, no disrespect to the French, but we're playing France. Is there any point in playing George Williams or Wellesby and any of these players and beating them by 70 points? I don't see what you get from that. So we'll be better off, going with some experience, of course, but then maybe throwing a few new caps in there, not just because to give them a cap, but let's just see how they go at international level. But all we are playing, I don't want to diss them, but we're just playing France. And every time we turn up against France, we're beaten by 70 points. I don't see what benefit that brings to anybody, really. None more so than the French, who are getting tonked by us every time we play them. So it might be quite nice, maybe just to give a few fringe players or people who are knocking on the door a little bit, go on, get to the south of France, go and have a game. Let's see what you can do. And let's hope Elliott is one of those that's picked, because he has deserved it. Whether he'd get a game for England, I don't know. But just to be in and around the England squad, I think it'd be huge respect for him, because I think he's earned that.
Yeah, and we saw the impact it had on Michael Lewis. I mean, obviously he got game time as well when he played against in the Tonga series. But we saw how Michael Lewis's game on leaps and bounds since being in that environment. So hey, let's see what happens. And I dare say, Scott, I mean, it is pretty disrespectful, but I do think pretty much most of the top half of Super League would beat that French national side. Not the whole Super League, and that's that's for another RobinPod. That's for another day, because it is what it is. Just the international game at the moment is just, in terms of England, it's just on its arse, really, isn't it, at the moment? So hey, anyway, let's see what happens after Thursday's game, and hopefully these players put themselves forward and they get the recognition they deserve. If you're going to Weldon Road on Thursday night, make sure you are loud and proud and back the boys. I'm sure there's going to be plenty of Rover supporters there in great numbers. This has been the RobinPod Weekly, powered by Budget Ties Auto Centre, the only car specialist trusted by the players, club officials and supporters of Hull Kingston Rovers.